LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Now listen. One of my all-time favorite cookbooks is the Silver Palette Good Times Cookbook. It was written in 1985 by Julie Rosso and Sheila Lukens, who owned the famous takeout shop in New York called the Silver Palette. In this cookbook, they organized 413 of their favorite recipes into sections representing the 4 seasons of the year. There are some great recipes in it, but I really love that each section is filled with wonderful seasonal sidebars, special season-specific foods, dinner party ideas, and my favorite, short lists of what they call seasonal cravings. For instance, autumn cravings include the first frost, jumping in a pile of leaves, crisp days alternating with midsummer days, the first bite of an apple, cinnamon toast, and looking toward Portugal. I'm not sure what Portugal has to do with autumn, but I'll take the rest of them. As adults, the change of seasons gives our year some structure. Otherwise, it would be just one long, boring stretch of paying bills, watching Netflix, and loading and unloading the dishwasher. When we were kids, autumn was really shaped by the start of the new school year. My mom would take us to Richmond Gordman to buy new school clothes. Richmond Gordman was this retail store on Hickman that had this big animal-themed play area for kids in the back of the store. It was way more fun than going to Sears. You crawled inside this huge blue elephant, basically wending your way through its GI tract and up to the mouth where you slid down the trunk, which was a slide. I don't think anybody ever cleaned those fake animals, the blue elephant, green hippo, or the yellow kangaroo, because when sliding down the slide, I always remember the funky smell of dirty children, snot noses, and the faint scent of urine. After school clothes were purchased, it would be off to Kmart or Kresge at Merle Mall to get school supplies. A 64-color box of Crayola crayons with a built-in sharpener, a Scooby-Doo pencil box, and some fabulous lunchbox with matching thermos. My lunchbox one year was this bright metal red plaid thing. My mom bought it for me, and I didn't want her to feel bad, but it was just god-awful. All the other kids had great lunchboxes. Even my little brother had a Hot Wheels lunchbox. My friend Tony ate his lunch from this really cool Munsters lunchbox, while I was walking around with one that looked like the pattern on some bagpipe player's skirt. Oh, the indignities I suffered as a child. Back in the 1970s in Urbandale, Iowa, everybody would rake up their autumn leaves that covered our yards. They'd rake them into these gigantic piles of orange, red, and gold. Of course, we wretched children would jump into the piles, which was a blast, but kind of sucked for my folks as they had to rake them all back up again. Then, everybody in the neighborhood would set fire to their huge piles of leaves. It was fantastic. A pyromaniac's dream come true. The only thing missing was Joan of Arc tied to a stake. The air in our neighborhood hung heavy with so much smoke, it was like an opium den. I loved the smell. For the poor asthmatics in our neighborhood, autumn must have been a total nightmare. My folks had this huge piece of furniture that was our stereo. In it was a turntable and 4 speakers. That was it. And this thing was bigger than a casket. You could have buried the whole Kardashian family in this thing. Too bad they didn't. But my folks loved their stereo, and music flowed at our house always. Autumn albums were Mama Cass's first solo album, Dream a Little Dream, and my favorite, the Partridge Family album, which was released when their series debuted in the fall of 1970. I wore that record out. When I was older, no longer were stereos huge pieces of furniture, and I would happily retreat into my basement bedroom and play my own music. I had a Montgomery Ward stereo system with built-in 8-track tape player, fancy, that I had purchased with my babysitting money. I added to my record collection, forever associated with autumn, Billy Joel's Turnstiles and Grand Illusion by the group Styx. Every fall we'd head down to Winterset for their covered bridge festival where we'd drink fresh-pressed apple cider, have hot apple pie with ice cream and caramel apples that got stuck in your teeth and eventually helped put your dentist's kids through college. As an adult, I don't have school starting to get me into fall. I live in LA. We go from portal of hell temperatures in August, September to the 50s, 60s in October, which is kind of autumn-like, but I'll take what I can get. We have one tree in our neighborhood whose leaves go through the changing colors and eventually fall off. And I am in love with that tree, let me tell you. I take pictures of it on my Map My Walk app. The owners of it must think I'm some kind of an obsessed arborist, wasting photos on two little sad red and orange leaves sitting on the grass next to a big pile of dog poop that some wretched dog owner didn't pick up. One of my yearly autumn cravings since 2010 is making a recipe I heard about on NPR called a pumpkin stuffed with everything good. The recipe is a lot of work, but worth making once a year because it's so delicious. You take a 3-pound pie pumpkin and fill it with a stuffing made of bread, bacon, shallots, herbs, hot Italian sausage, and cream. The whole thing cooks for 2 hours, and when it comes out of the oven, it's gorgeous, and you get beautiful slices of deep orange pumpkin flesh with a sliver of the most delicious dressing on top of it. Obviously, this is not a recipe for the gluten intolerant, dairy challenged, or those on Nutrisystem hoping they will one day look like Marie Osmond. Several years ago, I experienced pumpkin panic when they were sold out of pie pumpkins in the stores. I now have a yearly reminder on my Outlook calendar to start shopping for the right pumpkins. Yesterday, after not finding them at my regular grocery store, I began my quest. Ralph's had them, but they were all on the small side, just over 2 pounds, and that is not big enough. You need 3 pounds or more. Trying to get your hand inside a 2-pound pumpkin in order to clean it out and stuff it is like trying to give a prostate exam to the Lollipop Guild. Figuring beggars can't be choosers, I bought 3 of them at Ralph's, even though they were on the small side, just in case I couldn't find them elsewhere. Then I went to Trader Joe's for the Gruyere cheese, and lo and behold, they had pie pumpkins, and they appeared bigger, but you really can't tell unless you weigh them. When I asked the employees if they had a scale, they said Trader Joe's doesn't have a single scale in their entire store. A grocery store that doesn't have a scale? Seriously? That's crazy talk. One manager was trying to help out and held a 2-pound bag of apples in one hand and a pumpkin in the other and gave me his rough guess. Sorry, that's not good enough. So I passed and went home with my smaller Ralph's pumpkins. But it was bugging the hell out of me when I got home. So I grabbed my kitchen cooking scale and headed back to Trader Joe's. Now, when you weigh stuff with a digital cooking scale, you need a flat surface or it throws an error. Next time you're at Trader Joe's, look around and see how many flat surfaces you see. I'm telling you, there are none. People were looking at this crazy bald guy in an N95 mask with a little cooking scale and a basket filled with pumpkins, running all over the store, desperately moving merchandise around to find a level surface. I pushed the mustards and hot sauces out of the way, but the pumpkins were too tall for the shelf above it. No luck in the cheese section or $2 chuck section either. At the sample counter, I asked the lady to hold off for a few minutes. She saw my desperation and put a halt to the samples, and finally, the scale worked. I tore through my basket, pulling out the biggest pumpkins. Hallelujah! I found 3 of them that were 3 pounds and over. Perfect! I think the sample lady felt sorry for me, or was terrified of me, and offered me an entire spanakopita sample. I caught the eye of my fellow bitter and jealous shoppers as they were only offered a half a spanakopita sample. Listen, bitches, you lug 50 pounds of pumpkins all over the store, and then we'll talk about full-size samples. Bill asked if we can double the sausage and the pumpkin stuffing this year. Of course, that's the great thing about this recipe because, as the author says, it has almost no rules. You can change the filling a million different ways. It's just all about adding ingredients that we define as everything good. Wouldn't that be interesting if we tried to put our days together with only everything good? Obviously, there's stuff that happens that is beyond our control, but I've started looking seriously at my daily to-do lists. I find I have a lot of stuff on them that I would not be putting into my pumpkin, so I started crossing stuff off, and it feels kind of wonderful. New rule: if it wouldn't go in your pumpkin, it doesn't belong on your to-do list. It rained this morning. First time in months. Finally, autumn has arrived in La La Land. The tree down the street has 2 more red leaves on it. Yay! And though I miss some of my old autumn cravings, the start of school, the sound of the high school marching band practicing on the streets in the morning, and even that choking, smoke-filled suburban air. Tonight, I'll put on Mama Cass's Dream a Little Dream album, cook us up a pumpkin stuffed with everything good, and look toward Portugal.
LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Ba 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 bum.